You did everything right. You followed the map they gave you, the one drawn in golden lines of success. You studied hard, worked harder, built the life that looked perfect from the outside. Maybe you even got the dream job, the apartment that smells like new beginnings, the partner who fits beside you like a final checkbox finally ticked. But lately, something feels off. You wake up and stare at the ceiling a little too long, wondering why the air feels heavy. You pour coffee in your designer kitchen. The aroma fills the room, but somehow it tastes like nothing. There's this quiet ache you can't name. Not sadness, not depression, just a still emptiness humming beneath everything. It whispers, "Is this it? Is this what all of it was for?" And then, the guilt, because you know you should feel grateful. You are grateful. You worked for this life. You prayed for this life. So why does it suddenly feel like it belongs to someone else? You smile when people say you're doing so well. You nod when they call you lucky, and you are. But somewhere inside you're watching your own life from behind glass. Present yet detached. Everyone sees the version of you that's made it. But you see the one quietly unraveling behind the scenes. You keep performing the role. Competent, successful, fulfilled. But the script feels outdated. The words no longer match the frequency of who you're becoming. You used to chase achievement like oxygen. Every milestone was proof that you mattered. But now, every new accomplishment feels thinner, quieter, almost transparent, like success has lost its weight. You tell yourself maybe you just need a break, a vacation, a new project. But deep down, you know it's not about the scenery. It's about the self that built it. Because the life you created was born from a certain energy, a version of you who needed safety, validation, control. That version was doing its best. It built everything out of ambition and fear and love, all tangled together. And for a while, it worked. It had to. But now, the frequency that built this life isn't the same one that's living it. You've changed in ways the world hasn't caught up to yet. Your consciousness expanded, but your environment is still speaking the old language. And what you're feeling right now, this dull ache, this quiet dissonance, isn't failure, it's physics. It's the subtle collision between the energy you've become and the reality built to match who you used to be. Some mornings, you can almost feel it, like the fabric of your life is stretching, thin and translucent. The conversations that once excited you now drain you. The routines that once felt safe now feel suffocating. Even joy feels different. Less like fireworks, more like still water. A stillness that doesn't scare you but unsettles you just enough to keep you awake at night. You scroll through your memories, photos, milestones, moments, and realize how carefully it was all arranged, how hard you tried to hold it together, and still, something inside keeps whispering, "This isn't it anymore." Not because it's wrong, but because it's complete. That chapter has served its purpose. You've taken every lesson it had to give, and now, your soul is asking for room to breathe. But here's the strange part. When everything starts to lose meaning, you don't immediately feel free, you feel lost. You wonder if something's broken, if you're ungrateful, if you're restless or dramatic or bored. But what if it's none of that? What if what's happening isn't a breakdown, but a breakthrough in disguise? What if the emptiness isn't a void, but space being cleared? A sacred demolition making room for something new to emerge. Because every time a frequency shifts, everything built on the old one must dissolve. It's not punishment, it's resonance. The old vibration simply can't sustain you anymore, and so it collapses. Quietly, gracefully, almost mercifully. Even if it feels cruel in the moment, you can't rush it, you can't fix it. You can only feel it, the gentle unraveling of a world that once felt like home. Some days it feels like walking through a house filled with memories, knowing you've already moved out. You can still touch the walls, but they don't hold you the same way. The light falls differently. The silence sounds louder. You're not quite gone, but you're not really there either. And then one quiet morning you look around and realize you've outgrown the story you spent years perfecting. And in that realization comes grief. Because no one tells you that evolution requires mourning. You mourn the dreams that no longer called you. You mourn the version of yourself who fought so hard to make this life work. You mourn even the struggle, because at least back then it made sense. But beneath that grief, something else begins to stir. A quiet knowing, a pulse, like the faint heartbeat of a new life forming beneath the ashes of the old. You start to understand you were never lost. You were just expanding beyond the container that once held you. The walls aren't closing in, they're dissolving. The silence isn't absence, it's recalibration. You're not falling apart, you're falling through, into coherence with who you really are. And as you sit there, coffee cold, sunlight spilling across the counter, something inside you exhales. For the first time in years, you realize maybe this isn't the end of your life. Maybe it's the end of a vibration that can no longer carry the weight of your becoming. This isn't failure. It's the sound of your old reality collapsing, quietly, gently, making space for the frequency that's been waiting for you all along. It starts quietly, not with a storm, but with a soft disconnection, a feeling that the things which once defined you no longer have the same gravity. You look at your goals, the ones that used to light you up, and you can't feel the spark anymore. You try to fake it, force it, pretend the excitement is still there, but deep down you know something inside of you has already moved on. You used to wake up hungry for the chase, the next project, the next win, the next version of better. Now even when success comes, it lands differently. It doesn't thrill you. It almost drifts right through you. It's not that you don't care. It's that the part of you that cared has outgrown the game itself. There's a fatigue that follows you. Not the kind that sleep fixes, but the exhaustion of performing a life that no longer feels like yours. You find yourself smiling in conversations that don't touch you anymore. You laugh at the right moments, say the right things, but something in your tone gives it away. The warmth is gone. It's subtle, almost invisible to others, but you can feel it like static in your chest. You're not present in the old story, you're ghosting through it. And then there's the grief, the kind you don't know how to name. Because how do you explain mourning something that everyone else still celebrates? You grieve the dreams that no longer fit. You grieve the identity that worked so hard to build this life. You grieve even your own ambition, the fire that once kept you alive. And yet, through all of that sadness, there's gratitude. Because that version of you carried you through so much. They gave you structure, stability, a place to belong. You whisper to them sometimes, "Thank you for getting me here." But gratitude doesn't erase the ache. It doesn't silence the knowing that you can't stay in this version of reality forever. People tell you to be thankful. They say, you should be happy. Look at what you have. And they're right. You should be. And yet, the heart doesn't obey logic. You're not ungrateful, you're evolving. You're shifting from a frequency of survival to a frequency of authenticity. And that transition is disorienting. Because when you outgrow your life, nothing feels quite real anymore. The places you used to find joy feel too small. The conversations you used to crave feel scripted. Even the mirror looks different, not because your face has changed, but because your eyes have. You begin to sense that something vast and invisible is rearranging your inner landscape. You can't explain it, but you can feel the tension between two worlds. The one that's ending, and the one that hasn't arrived yet. You're standing in between frequencies, a liminal space where the old self is fading and the new one is still forming. And in that in-between, life feels quiet. And uncertain. Some days it feels like losing your mind. Other days it feels like remembering your soul. You might find yourself withdrawing, turning down invitations, avoiding noise, needing silence not as an escape, but as oxygen. You crave simplicity, honesty, depth. You crave people who speak from the heart, not from habit. You stop chasing more and start seeking real. You start noticing beauty in the smallest things. The way light hits the wall at 3 p.m., the sound of your own breathing, the relief of saying no and meaning it. It's strange, isn't it? The more you awaken, the less you need. You don't want to compete anymore. You don't want to prove. You don't even want to fix yourself. You just want to be aligned, to feel coherent with your own energy. That's the real sign of transformation. When peace starts feeling more important than progress. And yes, it confuses people. They'll ask what's wrong. They'll say, you've changed. And you'll smile because you know you have. You've changed in ways that words can't hold. You've outgrown chaos. You've outgrown noise. You've outgrown the version of you who thought they had to earn love by constantly becoming more. Now you're learning to love yourself by simply being. You're learning to listen to the quiet intelligence inside you, the one that no longer needs to shout to be heard. That's why you feel disconnected from the old life, not because you're lost, but because you've moved beyond the vibration that created it. What feels like collapse is actually coherence calling you home. And one day soon you'll look back at this version of you, the one who thought everything was falling apart. And you'll whisper, thank you, because you'll realize nothing was breaking. It was all unfolding perfectly, precisely to match the frequency of who you were always meant to become. They call it a collapse. But what if it isn't falling apart? What if it's simply physics? The natural reorganization of energy when your consciousness upgrades to a higher frequency. Everything in this universe vibrates. Every thought, every emotion, every cell, each one emits a unique signature, a frequency that ripples through the quantum field, sending out a message that says, this is who I am. And the field, that vast, invisible intelligence, responds. It mirrors back to you experiences that match your current vibration. For years you lived inside one frequency, the one built on striving, proving, achieving. Your energy matched that signal. And so, reality kept returning echoes of it. Success, validation, productivity, noise. But something inside you shifted. You began to awaken. Your vibration began to rise toward coherence, truth, stillness. And here's where the paradox begins. The world you built from your old energy can't hold your new vibration. The structure starts to shake, not because you did something wrong, but because your consciousness outgrew its own architecture. It's like trying to install new software on outdated hardware. It doesn't fit anymore. The system crashes not as punishment but as recalibration. You are not breaking. You are being rewritten. In quantum terms, every potential reality exists as a wave, fluid, infinite, undefined, and it only becomes real the moment it's observed. The moment consciousness collapses the wave into form. So what happens when the observer evolves? When your awareness expands beyond the vibration that once defined you? The old forms can't stay solid. They begin to dissolve, returning to the field of infinite potential so new forms can take shape. That's what you're feeling right now. The trembling between worlds, the subtle dismantling of what was, not chaos, but coherence unfolding. You see, the universe isn't cruel, it's precise. It always seeks resonance. When your inner frequency no longer matches your external form, the mismatch creates friction, and friction creates collapse. But collapse isn't destruction, it's synchronization. It's the old energy releasing so your outer reality can realign with the truth of your new vibration. That's why you feel everything slowing down. Why relationships shift, why passions fade, why silence feels louder than ever. Because silence is where recalibration happens. It's the 0 point, where your old frequency dissolves and your new one begins to hum. You're not meant to panic here. You're meant to pause, to listen. The stillness that feels so uncomfortable, that's creation in its rawest form. In the quantum field, stillness isn't absence. It's information waiting for coherence. Every loss is data being reorganized. Every ending is energy reconfiguring itself to serve a new level of consciousness. And yet, your human mind resists it. It calls it failure. It calls it emptiness. It tries to rebuild what's dissolving. But your soul knows better. Your soul recognizes the sound of expansion. It knows that collapse is how new worlds are born. Think about a seed. It must crack open before it becomes a tree. If you didn't understand the process, you'd think the breaking was the end. But the seed knows. That's how life begins again. That's what your consciousness is doing now, cracking open to let light in. You might notice the symptoms: fatigue, emotional waves, disinterest in the things that used to define you. These are energetic realignments, the nervous system catching up to the new frequency. You're not falling behind, you're sinking forward. Reality takes time to reformat itself to your new energetic code. And during that in-between, it feels like everything is falling apart. Because the old grid is detaching. But if you look closer, beneath the noise, beneath the fear, you'll notice an emerging pattern. A quiet harmony rising through the static. It's not the end. It's coherence replacing chaos. You're not losing your life. You're shedding the energetic scaffolding that once held your smaller self. And that's why this hurts. Because the ego mourns what the soul has already transcended, but the pain is not the enemy. It's a translation. It's energy shifting form. The ache is simply your old frequency saying goodbye. Let it. Let it crumble. Let it fall away like ash from a fire that's already burned its purpose. Because in the quantum field, nothing truly disappears. It just changes vibration. What looks like collapse is creation rearranging itself to meet you where you're going. And when you finally stop resisting, when you surrender to the silence, you'll start to feel it. a new hum underneath everything, a vibration that feels like peace, like alignment, like home. This is the threshold, the moment between what was and what will be. And if you can stay here, still awake, trusting, the field will respond. It always does. Because energy doesn't lie. It only echoes the frequency you hold. So when your world begins to collapse, don't run. Don't rebuild too fast. Just breathe. The universe isn't erasing your life. It's rewriting it to match the truth of who you've become. And when the dust settles, you'll realize you never lost anything real. You simply aligned with the vibration you were always meant to live in. At some point, you stop trying to fix it. You stop searching for the switch that takes you back. Because somewhere inside, you realize there is no going back. The collapse isn't a detour, it's the bridge. It's the threshold between what was built from effort and what will be born from truth. For so long, you've been trained to respond to endings with panic, to rush, to rebuild, to fill the silence. But what if this time the invitation is to stay, to sit in the ruins without trying to make them beautiful again? There's a holiness in endings that no one talks about. The moment when everything falls quiet, the noise of ambition, the hum of doing, the illusion of control, all fade into a single sound, the sound of your own breathing. At first, it feels unbearable. You crave the old distractions, the movement, the busyness that used to make you feel safe. But the universe has a way of silencing what no longer serves. It takes away the noise so you can finally hear the truth. This is what surrender really means. Not giving up, but giving in, leaning into what's happening instead of fighting to escape it. You stop asking on what's next and start asking, what's true right now? Because the truth is, what's dying isn't your life. It's the version of you that believed everything had to be earned, controlled, understood. And the more you resist the unraveling, the longer you delay your becoming. It's strange. The more you let go, the more everything begins to make sense. Not in the logical way, but in the way a wave knows exactly where to fall. You start to see endings not as mistakes, but as alignments. You start to understand that peace isn't found in rebuilding what collapsed, but in allowing yourself to stand in the silence of it. There's beauty there. Raw, unpolished, humbling beauty, because in that silence something else begins to build. Something invisible, something soft, something you can't yet name. You learn to trust the pauses, to see stillness not as stagnation but as construction, because in the quantum field, stillness is movement, just at a frequency the eyes can't see. So you slow down, you breathe deeper. You let the version of you that's dying rest in peace. You stop performing healing. You simply allow it. Some days that looks like tears that arrive for no reason. Other days it's laughter that surprises you mid-collapse. Because grief and grace often walk hand in hand. And even when it feels like nothing's happening, something always is. Under the surface, new codes are forming. Your field is reassembling itself around truth instead of fear. This is the quiet work of rebirth, the kind that no one sees, the kind that happens when you finally stop forcing your evolution and start trusting your timing. You begin to notice small things shifting. Your breath softens, your body relaxes, your thoughts feel less sharp. It's not that you've figured it all out. It's that you've stopped needing to. You start to live from intuition, not logic. You begin to follow resonance, that subtle pull toward what feels light, honest, alive. It's not dramatic, it's not loud, it's almost Ordinary, but it feels right. And that's how you know you're aligning again. The mind will still try to interfere. It will whisper, "You're wasting time. You should be doing more." But the heart knows the truth. Nothing real is ever lost in the stillness. This is where creation begins, in the pause between what was and what will be. So if you find yourself standing in the quiet collapse of your old world, don't rush to rebuild. Don't resurrect what's meant to end. Let the ashes cool. Let the light find you. Because in every ending there's a frequency of rebirth waiting to emerge. Maybe this is what grace really is. The courage to be unmade so life can make you new again, and one day, without warning, without planning, you'll wake up and the air will feel lighter. The silence won't scare you anymore. It will soothe you. It will feel like home. Because that's what surrender does. It turns what used to feel like loss into liberation. You'll look back at the ruins, at everything that fell away, and you'll realize nothing was ever taken from you. It was released. Released so your hands could finally be free to receive what's next. It begins quietly, not with fireworks, not with clarity, just a small piece, soft, unfamiliar, the kind that hums beneath your skin when you stop trying to fix yourself. There's no grand revelation, no divine announcement that you've arrived. Just the gentle realization that you don't have to chase anymore. You used to think transformation meant doing, becoming, achieving some higher version of yourself, but now you understand the real evolution happens in the subtle places, in how you speak, how you breathe, how you treat yourself when no one's watching. You stop chasing a new dream. You start living a new vibration, because this time you're not building from the mind. You're building from alignment. You start noticing that creation isn't about effort anymore. It's about coherence. When your thoughts, emotions, and energy begin to move in the same rhythm, life starts to respond differently. It's as if the universe finally has a clear signal to mirror back. And that signal is you. You used to make vision boards, lists, goals, timelines, hoping the external world would rearrange itself to match your plans. But now you see, life rearranges itself to match your frequency. So instead of asking, "What do I want?" you ask, "What vibration am I sending into the field today?" Because that's what the quantum field responds to. Not your words, not your effort, but your state of being. And when that clicks, everything changes. You start building from the inside out. One thought, one breath, one intention at a time. You choose peace before clarity, presence before performance, honesty before perfection. You stop fighting for alignment and start becoming alignment itself. You begin to live more slowly, but more intentionally. You find beauty in ordinary moments. Washing dishes, walking outside, watching light spill across the floor. You realize spirituality isn't something you do on weekends, it's how you exist, how you occupy the present moment. And something miraculous happens. The more authentic you become, the more effortless life starts to feel. Opportunities that used to require chasing now find their way to you. Conversations flow, synchronicities multiply. You meet people who feel like recognition, not discovery. Because coherence attracts coherence. The frequency of truth calls forth more truth. You start to see that every action is energetic, every word, every glance, every decision, it all carries vibration. And when you act from truth, you broadcast clarity into the field. You don't need to force anything. You simply stay tuned to what feels real. This is what it means to build a new life, not by constructing, but by remembering. Remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. Remembering how peace feels in your own body. Remembering that creation was never outside of you. It always began within. So now when you feel lost, you don't run toward answers. You return to stillness. You let your energy settle until coherence finds you again. You start to trust that the right people, the right timing, the right opportunities all orbit around your frequency, not your effort. And suddenly life stops feeling like a chase and starts feeling like a dance. You move with it, you respond, you flow. You start seeing how even the smallest choices are acts of creation. How a morning walk can realign your field. How saying no to something draining creates space for what nourishes you. How choosing kindness, even in silence, sends ripples across realities. You realize you're no longer rebuilding, you're remembering. The new life doesn't rise from ambition, it rises from awareness. It grows naturally, organically from the vibration of peace that you now embody. And it's not flashy, it's not performative, it's sacred in its simplicity. Because creation in its purest form is coherence made visible. You start to live like a tuning fork for the universe, vibrating so clearly in truth that everything false naturally falls away. And when people ask, "What are you doing differently?" you'll smile, because the answer isn't something you do, it's something you are. You are energy becoming aware of itself. You are frequency, learning to sing again. So you no longer chase timelines. You no longer beg for signs. You live as the signal itself, and that signal, pure, peaceful, coherent, calls forth everything that matches its tone. You stop thinking in goals and start feeling in resonance. You stop seeking meaning and start radiating it. Because when you finally build from the inside out, life doesn't just look different. It feels alive again. And that's when you understand. You were never rebuilding a life. You were rebuilding a vibration. And once your vibration aligns with truth, the world can't help but rearrange itself to meet you there, and then something shifts. So quietly you almost miss it. The heaviness is gone. The noise, the questions, the endless grasping, they've dissolved into something softer. What remains is peace. Not the kind you chase, but the kind that lives underneath everything. The kind that was always there, waiting for you to become still enough to hear it. You start to see that the collapse wasn't destruction. It was revelation. The old world didn't fall apart, it simply fell away. It couldn't hold your frequency anymore, it was never meant to. You've outgrown survival. You've stepped into creation. You no longer search for alignment. You are alignment. You move differently now. You breathe differently. You speak from a quieter place inside your chest. A place where truth doesn't need to be defended. You understand finally that the universe was never outside of you. It was always mirroring your vibration. The moment you stopped fighting the collapse, the field began responding. Not to your words, but to your coherence, and coherence is magnetic. It bends reality around it. So now, instead of chasing meaning, you live as the meaning. Instead of asking for signs, you are the sign. You wake up in the morning and the air feels different, lighter, clearer, like it recognizes you because it does. The energy you emit is the architecture of your new world. Every breath, every thought, every act of presence builds the new reality you stand inside. You're no longer the passenger of your transformation. You're the creator of its frequency. You start to notice that creation isn't loud, it's subtle. Like light blooming from within, it doesn't rush, it doesn't grasp, it simply radiates. And the world responds in kind. Not because you're controlling it, but because you've become coherent with it. That's what true manifestation really is. Not attracting something you don't have, but remembering that you were never separate from it. You've become the tuning fork of your own reality. Your life vibrates at the pitch of your presence. And the most beautiful part? You don't need to know what's next. You trust the rhythm now. You trust the intelligence that moves through you. You walk through your days with quiet reverence. Not because life is perfect, but because you can finally see it. You see how everything that collapsed was never punishment. It was precision. The universe was never taking things away. It was clearing interference so your signal could come through. You see now that creation doesn't start in thought. It starts in stillness, in how you hold yourself in the unknown, in how you breathe through what once terrified you. You've learned that surrender isn't weakness, it's the highest form of participation, because when you stop forcing outcomes, you make room for coherence to design something better than your mind ever could. And so, the light begins to bloom, not from the sky, from you. You feel it, that subtle hum beneath your skin like the universe exhaling through your body. You realize you are not in the universe is in you. Every cell, every heartbeat, every moment of awareness is creation happening in real time. You've stopped chasing love because you've become the frequency of love. You've stopped chasing purpose because your presence is purpose. You've stopped begging life to show you meaning because you finally embody it. And this is the moment, the quiet culmination of every collapse, every silence, every surrender. You stand in the ruins of your old world, and instead of rebuilding, you shine. The light that once came from outside now radiates from within. It pours through you, steady, effortless, infinite. You realize there's nothing left to prove, nothing left to seek, only to be. Because when you become coherence itself, life doesn't need to be controlled. It unfolds. It flows toward you naturally, drawn by the gravity of your truth. You understand at last that the universe doesn't rebuild your life. It reveals your resonance. And in that realization, you exhale. For the first time, you're not trying to become anything. You're simply being the vibration that builds new worlds. You walk forward, not out of ambition, but out of alignment, not to reach something, but to express what's already here. And as you move, everything begins to bloom again. People, paths, possibilities, all rising to meet the light that has finally found its home in you. The quiet collapse wasn't your ending. It was your becoming. You didn't lose your life. You became the light that builds new ones. And now, as you stand here, soft, luminous, whole, you know. You were never falling apart. You were falling into yourself. And the universe has been waiting for this frequency all along.